Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Ampire.
Hey babies, 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 hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. Just me today, no Callow. He'll be back with me tomorrow before Thanksgiving. We're going to start the show today with a segment of the Booth Review podcast, which I do with London Fletcher Mondays after every Commanders game. So we get like 24 hours to digest what we called in the booth. And then we kind of share our thoughts and think about what's coming down the road. And in this one, this was by far not close. The toughest loss of the season of the 5. I mean, the opener against Tampa was the opener. Rookie quarterback, didn't know we didn't know. It's a good team down there on the road, playoff team, very, group that had come back mainly intact. I mean, that was just a tough ask. Second loss to Baltimore. Hey, that was like heavyweight fight, right? Like, what is this about? Let's see where they kind of stack up. Season gotten off to like a better start than I think probably people thought it would, myself included. Execution of the offense was ridiculous. Comparisons to Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, et cetera, and they lost. And the score was close, and maybe the game really wasn't as close as the score indicated, but they were kind of right there, and they showed the resiliency in the fight and all that stuff. But they lost. I don't think anyone really kind of freaked, and they turned around, bounced back, and, got a couple of big wins. And, then came loss 3, Pittsburgh, which was kind of got away from them. Team really needed a bye. That's a good team, though. Scored 27 on that defense. You can spin it any way you want it. Turn around 4 days later, play Philadelphia, hottest team outside of Detroit in the NFL. We've got a rough run defense. They have a terrific running back who might be the MVP and is definitively like front runner for Offensive Player of the Year, bare minimum. And it didn't go very well. Short turnaround. As they said, they hadn't been practicing much. Offensive line's beat up. Jaden's still getting over his injury. 3 days to turn around, go to Philadelphia, play up there Thursday night. Just bad draw. So then they get the mini bye and they turn around. They catch marginalized Dallas on a losing streak. Hadn't won in a month. Getting outscored over that losing streak. Aggregate 34-14. Trayvon Diggs, Zach Martin don't even make the trip. Missing both of their starting guards. Cooper Rush is obviously the quarterback. CeeDee Lamb plays. He doesn't have Brandon Cooks opposite of him. DeMarcus Lawrence isn't playing. On and on and on and on. And I mean, Vegas assumed it. I assumed it. I thought they were going to win. And initially, like the way the team was kind of stacking up, I'm like, a couple weeks ago, I'm like, just win. Don't worry about style points. Who cares? But, as things kind of went through the week and Washington looked healthier and they're speaking this, hey, we needed that break. We got this mini break. We could really use the bye, but our bodies are refreshed and we're practicing and we're looking good. Dallas is in the dumps beyond the dumps. People are openly talking about who's going to replace Mike McCarthy. I mean, frankly, like I was going to walk out of that stadium on Sunday shocked if they lost. And I was going to be even surprised if they didn't win by multiple scores. So the way it went down, and I don't even really think about the chaos at the end as the part that really gets me. It's all the things that happened earlier, the first 3.5 quarters before we got to all the craziness that occurred. And that's where the game was lost to me. I mean, it was early. I mean, Dallas had a fumble, a blocked field goal, missed field goal, blocked punt, Washington at 3 points at half. Game over. So when I got together with London Fletcher, we kind of started there. And here was a piece of the booth review. Off of one of the toughest losses I could remember in a while. It's the Cowboys. It was a marginalized Cowboys. I think we thought it was a get-right game. And then we had what was a sluggish, odd game that turned into pure chaos by the end of it.
Yeah, when you look at the score and you see, 36-28, the final score?
34-26.
34-26.
Yeah, our brains are scrambled.
Right,
yeah.
you see 34-26 at the final score, you think, oh, man, this was a shootout. Had to be an awesome game. That was not the case. It was a sleeper in the first half, 3-3 at halftime. Really a disappointing loss given where we were and where we are in our season, where the Dallas Cowboys are in their season. But I will say this, going into the game, You look at the records. We were 7-4 going into that game. Cowboys were 3-7. You throw records out of the window anytime you're dealing with division opponents, things like that. Because of crazy things happen, these teams are so familiar with each other. I knew it would be a lot closer game. It wouldn't be a lopsided game.
Yeah.
But for us to come away on the other side of a victory and with the defeat, extremely disappointing.
It is. I'll go through it with you in a moment, but this one feels a little different than the other two, to be honest.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
100%. Like, going into the Pittsburgh-Philly week, I think we both knew, and I think the team has kind of acknowledged, like, they really could have used the bye. Like, they really needed it. They talked about how they hadn't really practiced as a group together in weeks. The schedule just did not line up very well for them. Those are two really good teams that they were facing. And they were very close to winning either one of them, but unfortunately, they didn't. They lost by a point to Pittsburgh. And similarly, like this one, the Philadelphia game got chaotic in the middle of the fourth quarter in a game that was actually very close throughout most of it. And unfortunately, they were just kind of 0-2. And I think you and I both were like, they got the mini bye. They look like they look and feel healthier. They're talking about how they practiced. And I think that's what's surprising about this, that I think we were expecting a win differently than maybe the other two. Like, I don't ever expect them to lose, but I knew that was a real task. The Pittsburgh and the Philly game, this one felt like, okay, we're going to get right and everything's going to get back on track.
Yeah, you definitely felt that way. Everything was set up for us. You're playing at home. Electric crowd. I mean, the energy of the stadium was just outstanding. You got a wounded Cowboys team that had lost 5 straight games. A lot of backups. They're without their starting quarterback. There's 2 starting guards. One's a Pro Bowler and one's an All-Pro, future Hall of Famer.
Top tight end.
Top cornerback out. Missing a lot of pieces.
Marcus Lawrence hadn't played in weeks.
Yeah, so they're missing a lot of pieces. We had the 10 days. We were healthier. You mentioned the bye week and needing a bye and all those things prior to this game. Our offensive line was as healthy as it had been in probably a couple weeks. Jaden, you can tell he looked healthier, looked refreshed. He wasn't running like he, in the 2 games prior, he wasn't running with the same type of gist and electricity like he was early in the season. But in that game, he looked like he had fresh legs, looked healthier. And to come away with the defeat, that was a huge loss.
Yeah. So we'll have to see how they respond. One more game before the bye. Another under 500 team coming in here who just won against a division leader. So, take nothing for granted. I think that's certainly, what one of the lessons learned this week. And I think to your point about this rivalry, there's so many examples, both sides, where the team that did not look like was going to win that day did. Like a 1-15 Dallas team beat a Super Bowl Redskins team in the past. A replacement team of Redskin players went to Dallas and beat a team where all their players crossed the picket line. Clint Longley for the old people on Thanksgiving. The block by Troy Vincent, that game was wild. So there's a million examples of this, but this one, it doesn't change the fact that this one really hurts.
Really hurts, and we'll dig into why we came out on the side of defeat, because there was a lot of things that happened, especially in the first half of that ball game, to where that game could have been over at halftime.
Correct.
You give the Dallas Cowboys, a team that, as I mentioned, coming in wounded on a 5-game losing streak. There was enough things that we could have done to have them pack it in at halftime, but we didn't take advantage of a lot of opportunities, a lot of great field position. And when you look at it and when you peel it back, we got nobody to blame but us.
I agree. The Dallas coming in not only was on the losing streak, but with all the different players and all the different, replacements that were happening, they had comedy of errors in the games leading into it.
Yes.
And actually, if you watched, The Philly game was actually close until halftime, and then it spiraled. And the Houston game got up on them, but they hung around.
Yeah.
And then it spiraled. It was these kind of laughable turnovers that kind of flipped the game upside down on them. That stuff happened early in this game on them. They go down the field. I want to credit the special teams early. They blocked the field goal, gave Washington great field position. Washington kicks a field goal. Could they have done better there? Sure, but they cashed in on it. Dallas gets the ball back, goes down the field again, hits the upright. You caught break number 2, decent field position, and this is where I think you're getting to your point. Washington needed to get a lead, sustain a lead, and I think Dallas would have packed it in and gone home. But that's not the game they ended up in.
Yeah, that was. You mentioned the block field goal, get excellent field goal position. Yeah, you would love to get 7, didn't get 7, got 3. So momentum's in our favor. And that was after Dallas started the game off moving the football against us, Then we buckled down in the red area or tightened down a little bit as high red area, or as they got closer to our end zone, we were able to force that block field goal, which was an outstanding scheme by special teams coach Larry Izzo, outstanding execution by Quan Martin and Michael Walker. Seeing some things on tape that the Cowboys showed how we can get some penetration and being able to get that block and setting us up in great field position. Dallas, the missed field goal you mentioned, it was the one that really stood out to me that we didn't take advantage of. Bobby Wagner and Johnny Newton, they forced a fumble.
Yep.
Excellent field goal. Excellent field position again.
This was after Washington had missed
after
the
we
51-yard
missed the 51-yard. After we decided not to go for it on 4th and 2, and we can get into that.
Yeah.
We can get into that as well. Missed the field goal. We get the fumble. We went 3 plays and out.
Yep.
That right there, you're able to get points. So let's say we get 3 out of that. We get 7. You're up 6-0, 6-0, or potentially 10-0. For a team that has lost 5 in a row, they're like, you know what, same old story. Let's just get out of D.C. healthy, and move on to Thanksgiving Day. But when we didn't take advantage of those opportunities, you let a team that's struggling, you let them stick around, stay in the game. Right before the half, we're up 3-0. You give up an explosive play to the Cowboys against double coverage, and this is what happened. Give up an explosive play. Now instead of being up 3-0 at halftime, they kick a field goal. It's a 3-3 game. That first half could have been totally different. Totally different. Let them stick around. Let a bad team get confidence, and we lose the game.
So the game's 3-3. Dallas had a blocked field goal, a missed field goal, a fumble, and a blocked punt.
Yeah.
It's 3-3. This game wasn't lost late. It was lost early.
It was lost early. Absolutely. 100% agree with that. 100% agree.
So I want to go back to what you mentioned, the decision to not go for it on a 4th and 2 when they tried a 51-yard field goal.
Right.
Austin Seibert had missed a couple of weeks with a hip
injury.
injury.
I think we were what yard line were we on? 30, 32?
About the 34-yard line.
34-yard line.
They'd been aggressive in the past with going for it on these 4th and shorts. I believe they threw on the 3rd and 2.
They did. They threw.
Which I was surprised.
Bram.
I was a little surprised by that. This is a team that's run the ball very effectively this year. It's a bad run defense. If you are thinking 4-down territory, and they've been a very aggressive team, you would have thought run on 3rd down, but whatever, that's just second guessing. And to not go either way, I think you were surprised. That was a long field goal. That was not a chip shot field goal. To not go for it on 4th and 2, what did you make of that?
I was surprised, but then anytime you have a situation where you're 3rd and 2 and you throw the football, maybe you're thinking, hey, this is 4-down territory. You've told the offensive coordinator, hey, you got 2 downs to pick up the 1st down. Obviously, that wasn't the case. I know Coach Quinn, he mentioned going into the game, they felt like, hey, this is kind of the target area for Cyber. We feel pretty good about him kicking, 51, 52-yard field goal.
Still.
Yeah, again, as aggressive as we had been, I think going into the game, we were 11 for 13 for fourth downs.
Yeah, I mean, one of the non-conversions was the famous bad spot on Zach Ertz against Pittsburgh, where that may have been a conversion too.
Right. And then
we've been stopped once on fourth down, the one in Philadelphia.
One in Philadelphia.
Yeah, which that's the one where I wanted them to kick, right? And take the lead.
Hey, so Dad's probably like, man, I can't win for losing with you guys. But I'll say this.
No, you're never going to make us happy, but that's not the point.
What part of the B-Rob injury played a part in not running the football in that scenario on 3rd and 2? Dallas's our run offense has not been, up to snuff. It wasn't what we were grown accustomed to from the running backs the last several games. In that game, Jaden was the leading rusher. 7 carries for 74 yards?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
The running backs, they didn't have a lot of success. B-Rob getting injured, so you don't have him at full strength. Did they feel comfortable enough running the football on that 3rd and 2? You don't get it. That's why you throw it. And then at 4th and 2, are we going to run it again, or do we have a play dialed up that we got to have it, we can convert?
I think we need to talk about the offense here just in general at this point. So Dallas, I thought it was a little overrated the way people were talking about their defense coming in as it being really poor. Like, as previously mentioned, like, they have a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
And if you watch them, they'd actually been very competitive.
Extremely.
Right? But these turnovers by their offense was spiraling games on them. And all of a sudden, the score looks really bad. Meantime, their defense, Micah Parsons looks like Micah Parsons. Like, the last few weeks, he looks like Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
This guy Overshone has really started to flash for them.
Yes.
They've gotten better. This is about our offense, not them, really. And I'll tell you the thing that really stood out to me was, and this is a trend, we started talking about this a few weeks ago, the Giants, who actually don't bring a lot of pressure packages, did against Washington. Pittsburgh, who doesn't bring a lot of pressure packages, did against Washington. Philadelphia, not as much, but we're winning with 4 and Jalen Carter. Dallas, not surprised, but they brought sometimes 6, not just 5, 6 free rushers coming off the opposite edge where Parsons was, where all the help's going to be. Jaden was vacating, and all of a sudden they were waiting for him. This is troublesome. Like, what's going on with the offense is, it's clearly this is more than a trend. These teams are bringing pressure packages consistently, often, because Washington has not had answers for them over the last few weeks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when you're game planning for a particular opponent, whether you're game planning, you're putting your defensive game plan in, you're putting your offensive game plan in, you're watching, let's call it the previous 4 games, and you're looking at things that have caused that opponent problems. And as you deal with us in our offense, something that has caused us problems, especially lately, has been teams bringing, 5, 6 rushers, the extra rusher, and we haven't been able to have answers to those, to that pressure, whether it be wide receivers not, guys not getting open quick enough, the protection not being exactly what it needs to be, whether it's, the protection going the wrong way, you guys losing their blocks, losing one-on-one matchups. There's been a accumulation of a lot of different things. It's not one thing that when you're not performing well, it's not, you just can't pinpoint and say, hey, this is it. Because if it was, we can fix that. Hey, we got to get somebody in there differently, or this is how we combat what they're doing. There was also, so the pressure practice, the Dallas, they blitzed us 17 times out of the 44 pass attempts.
Right.
17, and it would have been higher except late in the game, they were playing a little bit, well, not prevent defense, but they were playing a little bit safer defense on the back end coverage, wanting to keep everything in front of them. 17 times out of 45, that is a high volume of pressure package. It was almost 39% for a team that coming into that game, they were more about 31%. Blitz rate. So
yes, because they have a star pass rusher on one side who wins more than anybody but one other player in the NFL. He gets a pressure rate of like 21% on his own. They don't need to do this as often, but this is why it goes back to the Giants didn't do it like this. Pittsburgh didn't do it like this. Now Dallas didn't do it like this. All of a sudden, they're looking at Washington.
And guess what?
This is on Washington to figure out answers to this.
Guess what, Bram? Tennessee's probably going to do it like that. I haven't looked at Tennessee. I don't know what their blitz rate is prior to this game. If it's high, it's going to stay high. It may even go higher. And if it's low, they're going to bring it. I'll say this about Parsons, man. The thing that Dallas does great with him, and we do some of this with Frankie, is they put him. They move him around on the line of scrimmage. You just don't see him lined up out against tackles where you can chip him with the running back, chip him with a tight end, where you constantly know where he's at. They put him up over. They'll put him over guards, both guards, and he caused problems with both of our guards. They'll rush him up through the A gaps. He was a nightmare scenario because of his quickness, his speed. You're not used to that type of speed coming at you from that interior pass rusher, and he. Even when we didn't get sacks and Dallas got 4, the amount of pressure that he was able to generate, guys may have been open, but Jaden didn't have time to stay in the pocket and find those open guys because of the amount of pressure that him in particular was causing him being Parsons.
I want to go back to this one thing that just became noticeable with the pressure packages where Jaden leaves the pocket quickly.
Yeah.
Listen, they're outnumbered. There was a couple times free rushers were coming at him. So he makes the right decision. He leaves, and he goes to his right. It's been a tendency for him. All of a sudden, here they are bringing 5 or 6. Why is that cornerback not covering anybody? He's standing there waiting for him. They were, man.
Yeah, it's probably fire zones or trap coverage. So, there's teams where you can bring 5. There's pressures where you can bring 5, and you can play trap coverage. And what I mean by trap coverage, you'll have your corners playing the flats, and you still play 2 deep underneath. They're trapping any outside breaking right, any quick throws, things like that. So that's a trap coverage. It's a fire zone mentality. Bring pressure, play zone behind it. You got vision on the quarterback, so you got guys in position to make plays on the football if the ball's in the air. You don't have to worry about having to play a lot of man-to-man coverage, things like that. Now, they also did play a lot of man-to-man coverage too, and we didn't win consistently enough in those situations either.
Yes. So, all right, so this isn't a different tendency because these defensive backs were waiting for him to leave the pocket and run to that right side. They were literally – this is the difference from what we saw at the beginning of the year where he'd vacate all this open grass in front of him and he'd make this play. Mm-hmm. That's not what Dallas did yesterday. These guys were up on the line of scrimmage almost inviting him to run over to them.
It's a great scheme, great defensive game plan by Mike Zimmer. He's one of the great defensive coordinators in this game, and he has been for a number of years. And it's smart by him because think about how Jaden has hurt a lot of teams who have pressured us in the past. You bring pressure, he escapes, he finds a crease, and you got everybody playing man-to-man. Their back is to the quarterback, and he's running for 30, 40, 50 yards or whatever the case may be. What's the way to combat that or a good, change up, bring pressure, play zone behind it. Smart.
So let's talk about the receivers then, because let's go back to they need to win a little bit more one-on-one. Let me just start with Terry McLaurin. So he has a 100-yard game. 86 comes on the play at the end of the game, right? So 3 catches, 15 yards off of what happened in Philadelphia, 1 catch, 10 yards, whatever it was. That's just not going to cut it for the number 1 receiver on the team. Dallas, on the other hand, I hate to do the comparison, but they're missing primary targets. Jake Ferguson's not playing. Brandon Cooks isn't playing. Their running game is not something that scares people. CeeDee Lamb's the player you need to remove, but teams can't do that against him. They move him around. He has he has as many targets in the slot as he does on the outside. Mm-hmm. He's got 13, 14, 15 carries this year. I'm not saying make Terry CeeDee Lamb, but the point is Dallas seems to try to find an active way to get the ball in his hands as often as possible, and that's not happening here for Terry McLaurin.
That's not our scheme, our system, and I don't know how much of it of us using the no huddle so much. So you want to be able to get to the line of scrimmage as quick as possible. So that's why Terry primarily lines up on the left side of the football field. He's because they want to go fast. Hey, run your route, get lined up, do it again. Now, if are there times could you add more to Terry's plate and bring him in the slot more, put him in motion, do some different things. On the 86-yard touchdown, first time he lined up to the right side. They ran a wheel route from him. He lined up inside and ran that wheel against a cover 3 defense against the Cowboys, and they find a shot. So there has to be some adjustments made to where Terry's too good to only have 3 catches for 15 yards in going in the fourth quarter. You talk about go back to the game against Philadelphia. Quinyon Mitchell, good rookie cornerback, but he ain't good enough to hold Terry to 1 catch for 10 yards.
Well, he needs to be tested. He wasn't targeted very much.
So
right,
that has to be, and I know they'll go through self-scout during the bye week, but these is like, let's figure out ways to get Terry the football more often. Get him engaged. Defense, if we go and we see that you are making a concerted effort to get him the ball, now we have to adjust. Now we have to change some things up. Now that's going to open up opportunities for the other guys, because now they're like, hey, where's Terry at? Terry's lined up to the right side now. Terry's in the slot. Terry's going in motion. Terry's in the backfield, running Texas routes. CeeDee Lamb lined up at every single position on that field yesterday.
And he has all year.
Yeah, and they run a jet sweeps with him. They're getting him the football in a multitude of ways.
You can get the booth review wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check it out on commanders.com, the Commanders YouTube page as well. All right, we're going to stick on the Commanders next and kind of focus in on the offense. What do they do about it? Because everyone's talking about it. Bram wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
Give sport with gifts from Nike. From the retro Vomero 5 sneaker designed with Zoom Air cushioning to fleece engineered with lightweight warmth and next-level comfort, we have the perfect gift for any athlete on your list. Shop now at your nearest Nike store.
Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024, ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
All right, welcome back. All right, let's go through some of the offense that's going on here and where Washington is and where things need to improve, as they've hit a 3-game losing streak and the offense clearly has taken a downturn overall. I think perceptually and statistically, but to be fair, the early part of the season, Jaden Daniels was posting numbers that were really off the charts, specifically for a rookie. I think we kind of like laughed about this for like a month and a half, where I remember I used to say every week, I'm like, they'd put out these stats after every game, and we're just citing these ridiculous things like not since World War II, or not since 1976, or not since 1992, or not since this, or not since that. And every week it was something else with either the run game. They had multiple games with 3+ rushing touchdowns. They were having 200+ yard rush days regularly. They were having more scoring drives than incompletions over periods of weeks. Tressway punted the ball once in 2 weeks. I mean, like ridiculous things that there was just kind of no chance that would continue. His completion percentage in his first 4 games was nearly 71% against Tampa, almost 80% against the Giants, even though they couldn't score in the red zone, 91% against Cincinnati, 86% against Arizona. If he got through the entire season and led the league in completion percentage, which it's not trending that way any longer, he'd become the first rookie quarterback to do that since a Cleveland Browns player in the 1930s who, threw for like 600 yards for the whole season because they threw the ball 5 times a game. Like, it was utterly absurd what was happening. He even had nearly 70% completion in the Baltimore game, and then it's dipped. But dipped not as significantly as you would think. Now, in his first 4 games, he was never under 70%, and 3 times not under 79. That's a crazy number. That's a number that Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees didn't have at the height of their career. He had a completion percentage that was unusual for a 4-game span for anybody at any point in time ever. So clearly there was going to be a reversion back to a mean. Here's what it is over the last 4 weeks: 68% in the win over New York, 50%, his lowest by far and not close, and only the second time that he was under 60% in a game in the loss to Pittsburgh. And yet in the end, still, they scored 27 points, albeit one of them was a short field. Still, they scored 27 points against a top 5 defense. He was 69% completion percentage against Philadelphia, although people aren't going to remember it that way. It wasn't for a lot of yardage, 191. And then this past week, Dallas, 65% through the air, 7.2 per play, 25 of 38, 275 yards, albeit, if you really want to be fair about it, like one of the plays is the end of the game. That's an 86-yard touchdown that was a total blown assignment by Dallas in the secondary where, yeah, it's a completion all day, but it should have been a 20 to 30-yard completion and not an 86-yard one. Still, it happened, and it counts for the statistics. Overall, though, clearly Washington's offense, even though if you kind of just look at the numbers, you won't see them to be as striking a downturn as one would believe. I think eye test tells you one thing. I think the inability to be consistent in execution tells you another. And so everybody is now weighing in. What are they going to do to try to fix this? And one of them that I thought was really interesting that's gotten a lot of play is Dan Orlovsky from ESPN breaking down what's going on with Jaden Daniels and the offense.
McLaurin, because if it doesn't,
Of Jaden Daniels' play yesterday.
forcing the football, and that has me concerned. I'm concerned about the offense as a whole more than just Jaden's individual performance. And I think, the question is, well, why is he forcing the football? I think, number one, not enough conversation of let's get Terry McLaurin the ball early and often, then predictable pass concepts. Terry was at the bottom of the screen. He's by himself. The Cowboys are playing their single high safety one-on-one. He's going to force the football up top to Zach Ertz on, again, what we call an outbreaking corner type of route. McLaurin wins. That ball should go to Terry one-on-one more often than not. The second thing is you're just assuming you're going to go routes by both receivers. Corners are playing off. This ball is just like, hey, I'm launching this to Noah Brown for no reason. If you're going to take a go shot, it should go to Terry McLaurin, because if it doesn't, then you can see Zach Ertz breaking open in the middle of the field. It looks like Jaden just takes that ball and says, I'm throwing it no matter what. And then I talk about some of the predictable concepts. I mentioned this last week. They run what we call sail a ton, a go or a post route, a corner and a flat route. defenses know this by now. They're going to bait you into making those throws, and you can see kind of pulls it and forces an incompletion. That ball should go to the flat. So I think that Cliff and Jaden need to have a really good conversation of like, hey, Terry McLaurin's got 5 for 102, but 1 was 86. So he's got 4 for 16 yards. If McLaurin's one-on-one, all things equal, he should get the first look. That's not happening enough, and that's forcing some other errant decisions. And then Cliff's got to think of something other than sail, other than that 3-level pass concept in their play-action game.
So that's where Dan Orlovsky weighed in on what's going on. There is this narrative, and I'm going to play Dan Quinn's answer to it in a moment with a dip in the production of Cliff Kingsbury's offenses when it happened in Arizona year after year. And you'll hear his answer to that. Kingsbury last week was asked about it before the Dallas game and kind of nonchalantly played it off as if he didn't realize there is a narrative that exists about him and his offenses in December, which I'm all for burying your head in the sand and trying to pretend that some of this stuff is really happening when I think everybody knows that it is, and it's kind of undeniable when you go look at the stats of what happened with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals over and over in December. They had hot starts offensively, and then things would change. I'll buy into coaches who stay in a bubble, don't go on social media, don't read everything that's going on. I would actually encourage more people in the sport to do more of that, not listen to people like me or anybody else who have their own opinions about this, and just go about doing your business and listen to the people that you trust, and don't get so caught up in what media cycles are. But to sit there and kind of pretend that you don't know that that's out there, I think is a little much, and probably a little bit more beyond than what's believable. I'll play Quinn's answer to it in a moment. A lot of this is focusing on McLaurin, who over the past few weeks, outside of the miracle play at the end of the game against the Cowboys, would have had 4 catches for 24 yards. Remember, in the first game, they weren't able to find him very often, and Cliff came out and said, that's on me, and we're going to have to get him out there. He was asked a question in a public forum last week about tendencies, and was suggested to him to his face, and I thought this was the wrong place to do it. If you're going to ask a question like this, it should probably happen in a more private setting, but to ask a very specific schematic question of tendency, when it includes your number one receiver, you're not going to get a public answer to that, and they didn't, but it was asked. You're putting him out to the left side in the slot or out in the left, solo often. And therefore, isn't a defense getting a relative good guess about what his routes may be or the concepts may be? And don't you need to move him around more? It's interesting, when we played Dallas this last week, CeeDee Lamb has been targeted from the slot almost equally as often, at least going into the game, as he was on the outside. He had 12 carries and was given a couple of end-around opportunities against Washington. So they're consistently moving him around. And I'm not trying to compare anybody here, but I think the point is, CeeDee Lamb is the clear number one target. With Brandon Cooks hurt and then Jake Ferguson being out, and a running game that is unreliable at best and poor, if you're really being honest about it, the only real chance that they have is if CeeDee Lamb is actively involved in just about every play call. And I'm not sure that Washington's in the same position as them, but I think we can all recognize now that the idea that they could collectively have a number 2 receiver and it not, not be one primary target, that's all well and good and was happening earlier in the season. But I'm not sure that other teams are respecting Washington's quote unquote number 2 or secondary targets. And I think that's a fair, it's a very fair criticism of the team. So this is where Cliff and company, and I actually think the criticism at times can be very good. This team does pay a lot of attention to what people say. It doesn't mean that they should overreact to any of it. And every team has difficult stretches in the season, and this team has hit theirs. It's not all lost. If you go back and you look at all of the numbers that are out there, you'll see Daniel's numbers aren't that far off from where you would expect it to be, and not where it was. Like, I heard Fred Smoot say this on the postgame show the other day where he said everybody got greedy because what we saw was historic. Like, we didn't see really good play. We saw phenomenal, unprecedented, historic play. And when you put that up as the comparison to what's happening right now, then I think you will be disappointed and think there's a massive drop-off when maybe this right now is a little bit closer to what you should expect. But are they executing particularly well? No, they're not lately. They'll be the first to admit that. I'm very concerned about the running game if Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson aren't going to play. Let's start with this weekend and then Eckler's long-term health, because that was a very serious hit. If they can't get their primary running backs back and they can't rely on the run game to be as effective or lean on it as much as earlier in the season, then it will shift over to Kingsbury finding ways to utilize the secondary targets more. Luke McCaffrey is barely targeted. Last few weeks, Olamide Zaccheaus is barely targeted. I'm not saying they're the answers, but if they're going to be completely, overlooked by their own offense, why do you think defenses are going to pay any real attention to them? And then the other part of all of this is at some point, they're going to have an answer for what has become more than just a trend, which is teams have decided pressure packages work, and they're going to bring numbers and come at Jayden Daniels. And, maybe some of this was an injury early, and maybe some of this is what Orlovsky was talking about, where he's saying they've become somewhat predictable. You can goad them into throwing the ball into places that it probably doesn't belong. And maybe, just maybe, Daniels is starting to get duped into some reads that teams are looking for. The Dallas one was very telling with where they placed corners when he was flushed out of the pocket and started running the ball. It's not that he wasn't effective at it. He ran 7 for 74. He looked healthier, and he did damage them with his legs. But there were a number of occasions where free rushers on pressure packages came opposite side of the star player, Micah Parsons, flushing him back to the right, his preferred spot to run to if it's not a designed run. And there was a chess aspect of this. It's either you're running at Parsons, and if he isn't blocked well, he's going to make a play, or secondarily, there was a corner waiting. And for crying out loud, if you're bringing 5 or 6, then the corner needs to be covering somebody, right? Well, he wasn't. He was waiting where Daniels was coming to. So there is a lot of soul searching to do, and there is a lot to work on here. And I don't think that the sky is falling or that hope is lost. I just think there is time now where they're going to have to tweak. They're going to have to figure out, okay, this quarterback's a fast learner. It's time to shift his focus and viewpoint to other spots, because the defensive coordinators have caught up to the system as a whole and to the NFL. None of this was ever going to be easy. Be right back. Bram wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. A couple quick thoughts on Monday Night Football. Ravens win, get in the win column. That's a good one. They beat the Chargers, who probably not unlike Washington a little bit, except with a veteran quarterback, are ahead of schedule. I mean, they reset their roster too, not unlike the way Washington did, brought in a new coach, obviously very experienced coach, has won a ton. So expectations are, okay, here's the reset year. Let's see what happens. They're in the division with the Chiefs. You wouldn't expect them to really compete with the Chiefs. And they've kind of been ahead of schedule, and they've been extremely competitive. They won a lot of close games. Well, last night was a test for them, and I wouldn't say they failed it, but Baltimore roared back, took a lead, was never really in danger in the fourth quarter. And the Chargers they tried a number of deep plays down the field. I don't think they have the weaponry yet to pull that off. And then, you're in a vice grip with Baltimore if you fall down especially by 2 scores in the fourth quarter, because they're going to run the ball down your throat. And then I saw the stat where they're averaging over 7 yards per play. If that holds through the end of the season, it's going to be an NFL record. No team has ever done that. Greatest Show on Turf didn't do it. The undefeated Patriots team didn't do it. The great Dolphins team from the early 70s didn't do it. The Miami Dolphins with Marino never did that. Joe Montana's teams never did that. So, Peyton Manning's teams never did it. So that would be something if they pull that off. And this is just another sign to me. I think the AFC feels more wide open than the NFC. I think the NFC is boiling down right now to two teams, Detroit and Philadelphia. We'll see, and injuries can change all that. And obviously we got a long way to go, but that's what it feels like. In the AFC, it feels wide open. I know what the Chiefs' record is. I know that Pittsburgh leads that division. Baltimore and Buffalo feel just as dangerous as ever when the playoffs roll around, and it might be a coin toss. And if Miami's going to turn their offense back around, then watch out. They're going to have a real shot too. All right, let me touch on one other event that I was very fortunate to get the opportunity to host last night. I was outside of Audi Field as the Spirit made it back to D.C. after losing in the NWSL Championship to Orlando over the weekend. So we had a pre-planned event to honor the team. Obviously, it was going to be a championship celebration had they won. And as it turned out, we turned it into a fan appreciation night for having a really great, incredible season. This team reset their roster. They ended up trading away a number of prominent veteran players, got a number of draft picks. The draft picks turned into a rookie class, 6 players. They broke a record this year. All 6 of them scored. Croy Bethune became the midfielder of the year and rookie of the year, even though she didn't play the last couple months of the season because she had the most assists. She was just a revelation for them. Trinity Rodman had another outstanding year. Aubrey Kingsbury was unbelievable in net, and this team had a magical ride to take on the team that went gate to wire. They led the league from the get-go. They never trailed. They had a 23-match unbeaten streak to start the season. They won the regular season title called the Shield against the Spirit with 4 matches to go. They hadn't lost a match by that point. They dropped a couple late, but they almost nearly had a perfect season, undefeated, or at least no losses. They were terrific in the playoffs, and there was an unfortunate call that went against Washington in the final, but still it was just really a magical season. Expectation they were going to be able to do this, so it was really cool to get up on the stage and get to do an interview with the coach, Jonah Heraldez, and get an interview with the 3 captains of the team. And the rest of the team was there, and the fans just got to celebrate with them because I really do feel like it is the beginning of something. And it was really a great journey to be with them on the radio all year, calling their matches this season. And hopefully we'll be doing it again next year and for years to come. But I want to thank the team for the opportunity to share that moment with the fans last night. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bram wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.